Okay, we're recording. All right, welcome back. Tonight we're going to talk about the 19th century and the Victorian era. Last time we ended talking about Thomas Chippendale and his manufacturing and his furniture. His book, The Directors and Gentlemen's something, so I never remember the title of that book. It's a style book and a model for furniture makers that was used really all over the world, but mostly Western Europe and the U.S. You can find Chippendale furniture in the United States, which is not originally by Thomas Chippendale, but more like a lot of people made Chippendale furniture based on his designs. And he picked up a lot of designs from other places, from other people, and collected them. And I think fairly you could say he plagiarized a bit. But he had furniture designs in what he called the Gothic style, in the Chinese style, in the classic style. And so it was really more of a catch-all of different styles, but he also had there were some more original designs that were his. So Chippendale, you need to know who he was. One of the more important things about Chippendale, it's important to me, is that he had his own manufacturing shop, and he also had a retail storefront. And so you could go there and order things from him, from his shop, and that was a new thing. Retail, I guess establishments for interior furnishings was a new thing in the 18th century. And Chippendale's, to my knowledge, he's the first person to have furniture named after him. He's the first person who was not a king or queen, some sort of head of state, to have furniture named after him. So the furniture became known as Chippendale, the way Queen Anne or Louis XV, Louis XIV furniture was known for those patrons. All right. Now, the Victorian, in this here book, the Abrams Guide, the Victorian era, as you see here in the presentation, is not a style, but a period between 1837 and 1901, corresponding with the reign of Queen Victoria of England, occurring primarily in England, France, and the United States. Victorian era saw a variety of technical innovations in furnishings and interiors, the recycling of styles such as Rococo and Gothic, and the appearance of new styles such as arts and crafts and Art Nouveau. The neoclassical revival styles, when people refer to a style as Victorian, they're talking about the revival styles. Arts and crafts and Art Nouveau happened during the Victorian era, but they're not really what you would call Victorian. They're really more a departure from that, from the revival, from those revival styles. So Victorian is an era, not a specific unified style. Okay. And so according to the textbook, the Abrams Guide, I'm going to read a little bit of this to you. You can follow along if you like. The revival styles of the 19th century are often referred to as Victorian, after the British monarch who reigned from 1837 to 1901, when that country led the Western world in industrial and social growth. But there is no specific Victorian style. The period was a battle among several simultaneous styles, all reprising or reimagining designs from the past. Victorian eclecticism incorporated the Second Empire and the Restoration in France and was seen in several European countries, but it is most closely associated with England and North America. I think you could say the United States. In America, in the United States in particular, it saw the introduction of some half-dozen styles within one half-century, often in the same home, the same room, and occasionally on the same piece of furniture. So it was kind of a free-for-all, Victorian. The dominant influences were Greek, Gothic, Rococo, and Renaissance, each coalescing in a specific revival style, but the furniture forms remained essentially the same, varying only with the application of different ornament. There was little genuine innovation until late in the century, with the introduction and invention of mechanical chairs and multifunctional furniture. In most revival-style interiors, surface decoration supplanted originality of design. Furniture was almost overpowered by carving, upholstery, and grandly overstuffed, tufted, and trimmed. Draperies were layered, fringed, and tasseled. Carpets and textiles were available in a variety of patterns appropriate to each revival style, and machine-printed wallpapers by mid-century were ubiquitous, meaning they were everywhere, offering a new and relatively inexpensive way to envelop an interior with pattern, with coordinated panels and borders to suit any setting and style. As the decades passed, the lights of decorative oil or gas lamps faded in the enthusiasm for chandeliers, which waned in turn with the introduction of electric lighting in the 1880s. So electricity is now a thing, and electricity with electrical luminaires require a new type of design. Colors shifted from soft to bright to dark, particularly in the final decade, when gloomy tones were considered the height of sophistication. After Prince Albert died, he was Queen Victoria's husband, she wore black in mourning for much of the rest of her life. I believe actually for the rest of her life when she was out in public. And it became fashionable in England to wear black in sympathy for the Queen. After the publication of books on color theory, varying color palettes were chosen for specific rooms, darker for masculine environments, paler for feminine ones. Outdated ideas, in my opinion, now. They were outdated a long time ago. Muted for private settings and lively for public ones. The Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia in 1867 awakened nostalgia for America's past, led to an interest in antiques and colonial revival interiors. A strain of exoticism also appeared late in the century, though it was generally confined to decor of a particular room or individual pieces of furniture and decorative objects. The fad for such conceits as Moorish smoking rooms or Arab halls did not constitute a style, but was part of the mélange that made for this diverse and intriguing period in design. So a mélange is a mixture. The styles of the century conflated in the so-called Gilded Age, which is at the end of the 19th century, when the New York townhouses and Newport mansions of a new aristocracy evoked the Beaux-Arts and Baroque. And Beaux-Arts is yet another neoclassical surge at the end of the 19th and early 20th century. Beaux-Arts refers to the French term for fine arts, which is what that means. And specifically, the neoclassicism that was promoted by the École des Beaux-Arts, which was a dominant art school, really. It's sort of like, I guess it was like the state-funded, I believe it is the state-run art school in France in the 19th century. They were all about promoting neoclassicism, that the classics, the Romans and the Greeks, were the model to follow, and if you can't do that, then you really shouldn't be doing anything. Very limiting. As you know, with neoclassicism really has this sort of stamp of quality, because we know, there's this sort of like, legitimacy attached to it, and rightfully so. But by the middle of the 19th century, you get people deciding, more in the arts, that they're tired of it. They want to be able to come up with something that is original, and copying the past is no way to be original. All right, almost done with this first little bit of the overview on Victorian. Okay, so Victorian interiors are often described in broad generalizations, most of them unflattering. A clutter of furniture and objects, a profusion of textiles, a plethora of pattern on every available surface. Too much of not good enough. But generalizations are misleading, albeit tending toward the overdone. These interiors are filled with life and personality. They are as creative in their way as any in history. And I think that's true. They are very creative. I think that, yes, clutter, they can look, clutter can be a very good way to describe some Victorian interiors, but not all of them. I think, in a lot of cases, if you have someone who has enough, someone who is wealthy from the railroad industry and kind of new to the idea of wealth, and they have way more money than they know what to do with, they might just end up building some trashy monument to how much money they have. That happens. It still happens. I've seen it. Okay. All right. So with Victorian, the Gothic revival is very important to the 19th century and the Victorian age, but it's not the only one. There's one that the author doesn't mention. That is naturalism. Naturalism is sort of it's kind of an idea, and you see it stylistically in furniture, where there's this desire for comfort and novelty of form, and they produce some odd-looking furniture, which is kind of cool. Metal springs or sprung upholstery is introduced in the early 19th century. So you now have upholstery that will spring back after you sit on an upholstered chair or sofa. It will spring back. If it's just stuffed with goose feathers or something soft, eventually you're just going to press that down from sitting on it. So sprung upholstery allowed for this more, like you can see, like the button upholstery comes with sprung upholstery. And so in a lot of these are like the buttons are really deep, and so you get this like really poofy, cushiony furniture. And naturalism is described as a desire for comfort and novelty of form. So it can tend to look a little bit irrational. Metal is an important thing in the 19th century. Iron is used for a lot for building structures, for building bridges, the Eiffel Tower, for example. I'll show you some images of some of the feats of construction with iron. metal beds. So like some furniture is made with metal instead of wood. Beds in particular, and the reason was bed bugs. They had a they it was a fight against those nasty little creatures that is still going on. And steel. Steel is important to the construction of tall buildings. Iron works, iron works well to make large structures that are fairly lightweight. Steel is stronger, and steel. There was a process called the Bessemer process, and the Bessemer process is the first method that was developed to allow for the mass production of steel. So steel on an industrial scale. And steel is just it is a form of iron that is processed in a way that makes it harder. And so it has a much higher tensile strength than iron. And with steel frame construction, taller buildings were able to be built. Chicago is a place where some of the first real true skyscrapers were built. I think you could say that the first skyscrapers were built here, and that led to changes in the exterior of buildings. You don't have you don't have load-bearing walls because the structure that's holding the building up is all on the inside. It's all in the steel frame. So the exterior can be lighter, windows can be larger. Eventually we get to what we have now, where you just have a glass facade on a building, which is like a glass, referred to as a glass curtain wall. And that glass on the outside is not structural, it's not holding anything up. So you can do more, you can do things with, different things with the exterior of the building, and the exterior necessarily changes. So all this is starting, all this stuff gets started in the 19th century. And the author mentions electricity. Electrical lighting was first introduced early in the 19th century, but only for either industrial applications or for exterior lighting. And initially there were like arc lights that were really, it was very harsh lighting, but it was a really a marvel that you could light any space with electricity. So electricity gets going in the 19th century, and the gas and oil that are still being used in the 19th century to light interiors gradually gets replaced by electricity. Gas lights had their moment. Gas lights were competing with electricity for which form of lighting would be the lighting of for interiors. But all of it, whether electricity or gaslight, initially was not the safest way to light it. None of it was really safe, since even if you're using candles, you have an open flame. But they had to figure out how to safely run wiring through a building, like through the walls. With gaslight, you had to have gas lines running through the walls, which has its own danger. So this is a period of change. There's a lot of things going on in the 19th century. All right. That, I think, is what I wanted to say to you for my notes. Yeah. All right. So Crystal Palace. So these like large exhibition halls. The Crystal Palace was a kind of like this show place where you would have these big expositions where you would show off. It sort of became a thing in the 19th century to show off what everybody's doing, and what is What is the new thing? A cast iron table. So cast iron as a this is like this is something that looks classical, looks Roman or Greek. Yeah, it looks a little more Greek. But it's this is an industrial product. Here, early spring and a sofa. So here is the seat flipped up, and you can see the metal bands with the springs there. Oh, and so here's the sofa closed, and there's the sofa open. So it's a big deal. And notice this does have a bit of a, like that lectus shape on the arm, the old Roman couch. All right, so here is this is the, this is what you might, this is sort of like what you might see as like a cluttered Victorian interior. This is the late 19th century, so you see this, the upholstery, like this, button upholstered furniture. And like, this chair looks a bit like a, this is like, looks like a Empire or maybe like Louis. Yeah, this is an Empire with the big, I can't quite tell. It's so cluttered and dark in there. But you see the way this, like, the curtain with the tassels, there's a palm here. This like cover on this, on the lamps. Yeah, and like the wallpaper with neoclassical. Yeah, this is sort of like these kind of like 18th century, like genre paintings. And of course, the poor bearskin rug. That's because it's the United States. Okay, so printed. Yeah, printed like wallpaper if it's block printed. Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is a. I have a picture of that. Yeah, there you go. The Belter Rococo Revival sofa. Could you, would you say maybe over the top with this crazy, crazy carving? I mean, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful piece of furniture. Hmm. And there are the an entire set of this furniture. Yeah, so this is, so you can tell from the upholstery this is a 19th century piece from that button upholstery. This is, you can see on the back. God damn it! Sorry. This sort of asymmetrical, little, just sort of kind of crazy carving all over. That's some pretty difficult work right there, I'll tell you. And here, so this is a good example of something like naturalism in furniture. This love seat, and you can see the fringe along the bottom, little tiny casters for rolling it around down at the bottom. Um, and it's tassels, fringe, deep button upholstery. Um, Looks kind of comfortable. I mean, I think it's kind of fun and weird. So I'm all for that. I like that. Mm. And here with these like cushions, that's these big little like floppy pillows that go over that wooden arm. Um, it's something, I guess it's a solution to that, you know, upholstering the arm. And here, French interior, 1848. Um, how many different patterns do we have here? There are quite a few. Um, yeah, why choose? Why stop at one? I mean, there is the green is a unifying feature, the green and the gold. So if you think about this in terms of interior design, um, really, I think that the contrasting patterns is really more of a detail and does not prevent me from seeing that the green and the gold are a unifying element throughout the entire space. So I don't. I think I would probably want personally some more like maybe some like unpatterned surfaces here and there. I think the furniture doesn't really need it all the time. Any thoughts on this image? Does this look
I
interesting?
have a few thoughts.
Let's good.
Um, it's kind of funny because looking at this, obviously there's so many patterns, and that's not really what anyone leans towards today. But with the green and the gold, like I feel like a lot of that is in right now. And I personally love mirrors, like gold mirrors like that look very vintage and ornate and everything. And I have a few mirrors that look like that in my house, and I love like the emerald green. So it's kind of cool to see
Yeah,
this. Obviously, it's way over the top version, but I feel like a lot of what's in this room is incorporated still today in interior design.
yeah. It's thank you.
I I would actually agree with Hope. I think although it for on by today's standards, it looks over the top and overly ornate and patterned, but for some reason it works. Maybe it's because it's um, the palette is limited, but the a lot of pattern. But I actually kind of not anything again that I would also want for myself, but it doesn't. I don't dislike it,
Yeah,
if to put it that way.
yeah. I'd hang out there. Yeah, it's and it's, I think it's to me it's always an interesting exercise. It's kind of like what when I was in art school, we would look at artwork and talk about do you like it and why, or do you not like it? I mean, like, do you think this is any good? And trying to be objective about it. You could look at it and go, ugh, that's awful, and then try not, and then dismiss it. But a lot of work went into this, and there are the green and the gold pull it together, and I think this is like a good like that. And those mirrors look great. The mirrors do a lot for the space, um, and it's I think maybe it's also an example of like this. It may not be your taste, but you may probably have a client who wants you to do something that you don't particularly like, but it's what the client wants, and so you have to make it look as good as possible.
Duffy,
Yeah.
I have lost my parents, and I'm probably one of the older um, students in the class. And what's funny to me about it is it looks so familiar because I remember going through a lot of their things, and
Yeah,
some of the old albums came from their parents back in like the late 1800s.
yeah,
And I feel like some of the good stuff got passed down.
yeah.
Uh, but and actually some of the fringe I've seen in more update with more updated fabrics,
Mm.
like more Florida looking stuff. And I think it's kind of fun that some of that comes back again. I can't say I love all the light fixtures. I feel like they've got way too many, but I guess if they didn't have light bulbs,
Right.
you know,
That's yeah. If this like 1848 interior lighting was not there was no electricity.
right. So you're not going to have recessed and
You gotta have hold as many candles as you can.
yeah,
You know, and you want to have this like the setup on the mantle in front of the mirror above the fireplace. You've got to have a lot of candles there because that's going to reflect more light back into the room.
right. And I think Orientals go in and out, but I feel like they're coming back again.
Yeah, you know, I think with a lot of this stuff, it's a good point, Mary. My grandmother's house in Detroit, you know, I remember as a kid, she had stuff from, you know, she had stuff from like, you know, the 20s and the 1930s still in her house. And so, you know, that this would still probably have been fashionable in the 20th century to my grandmother. Yeah,
Yeah, and then if she had stuff from her ancestors, that's why it probably looks sort of familiar to us.
yes. Although some of her stuff would have come, she didn't because her parents left Europe. So it's too bad.
Yeah.
But the yeah, I think a lot of this, you know, some of this stuff has not really gone out of style since this time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like somebody always wants this. So, but I think it's important, you know, it's important to have a good, decent idea of what Victorian is, because people will talk about Victorian in general terms or even vague terms, and just understanding that it is like if someone says like oh this like you know I have this Victorian chair, it's you know or like a Victorian you know table, it's probably some version of some neoclassical revival, except for these. So, but this is where like the upholstered like these love seats and these you know these recliners here, um, or this I guess is like this armchair. These are these are kind of new. I mean, like these don't really look like chairs from the 18th century because the chairs like this didn't really exist. You know, these love seats are kind of an original. You know, they're pretty original to the 19th century. Okay, so here's a painting by the painter Tissot, which shows the artist house in St. John's Wood in you know, outside of London, and so it's sort of like this, you know, like almost like a casual scene of what a Victorian interior looked like. Heavy, dark window treatments, comfy furniture, reclining, reading the newspaper, um, screens to divide off these very tall spaces, animal skin coverings, which is, you know, sad for the animal, and these large, just like, you know, different designs of carpet. All right, so Gustav Herder was made furniture in New York in the 19th century. And you see these little Amorini-like creatures and then animal leg. This goes back to, this is like Baroque or Rococo in its design here, but then the rest of it with the, sorry, this wireless mouse is extremely sensitive. So the upholstery is kind of like this like new thing laid over the top of an earlier style of chair, and then the this sofa has this like so ridiculously large back. That's kind of a new thing. And here, more Gustav console table with a mirror underneath. And another one looks like it's going to start walking around or something with those cabriole legs. So that's a good example of a cabriole leg with that curve outward and then back in, and it is literally it's a goat leg, literally. Lots of imitation you see. There are a lot of imitation, like instead of carving on some furniture that was mass produced. So industrialized production meant that they were producing stuff faster. So a lot of this stuff was being made in pieces and then put to, then assembled. In some cases, paper mache was used in a mold to create the appearance of carved wood ornament. That's cheap, but they did it. So here's a console with mirror. All one great big piece. That is a Hulk, man. And you look at it, you can see just this layered neoclassical stuff. So what can you identify different things on this that you could say are neoclassical?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, I wasn't sure if I'm on. So the Amorini on the top,
Mm-hmm.
and we also see the pediments, the statues. Those are classical, and just the way it's made, it's very symmetrical. Although it's very ornamental, but it's orderly. So it's, what's on one side is on the other. We see kind of ionic, order, and sort of something that looks like a column, if you could put it that way.
Yeah, kind of in the middle. Sorry, kind of like in the middle of it, with like there's this like figure, this sort of like bust portrait, kind of like this head with the ionic scrolls, and there's a palmette in between them. So yeah, so that's like it's kind of a good. It's like you can see elements from Greek, like
A lot of Greek, yes.
Roman. So it's like this might be like Greek revival, but it's kind of Roman at the same time. So maybe Rococo. Some of it, honestly, it's hard to figure out. Like you can see that in very vague terms, it's neoclassical. but it becomes this mishmash of Roman, Renaissance, Greek, Rococo, Empire. Maybe it's like whatever. It's neoclassical. Now you can see at the top on the side the this like little broken pediment on the side with the lyre.
Is it a lyre? Yeah,
It's
inside.
got the
Yeah.
lyre in between, in the middle of the broken pediment. So a lot of this it's very inventive because some of it is it's like a combination that is original. So this is in Connecticut and looks a bit like it could have come from 100 years earlier in England. But this is all like this panel on the wall. This is very Roman. And the Vanderbilts were a very wealthy family. And so they built some mansions for themselves up and down the East Coast. So here is a photograph of a drawing room in the William H. Vanderbilt house in New York. This is Menlo Park, California. So all across the USA, you get this. And so here you see this way in the back, there is that Herder Brothers console with the mirror. So you can see what that looked like in an interior. This is, by comparing with some, this is fairly clean here. More from the Vanderbilt house. So, it's interesting, this eclectic collection of different objects. I mean, chairs, different chairs all around, different types of chairs. And, similar to that console and mirror, kind of vaguely neoclassical. It's neoclassical, but they're putting in elements wherever it's convenient. Now here is a detail of this chair that's in the center here. That's beautiful. So it's nice to see what some of these things actually look like. The black and white photos make it look kind of dreary, but this is a Chinese. So this is like a chinoiserie. This chair with like what they understood to be Asian ornament. So Herder Brothers made a lot of the stuff that you see in these homes. That's pretty beautiful. That looks pretty Greek right there. Yeah, so I mean, some of these things by themselves would be beautiful, but I guess they just couldn't stop. Montgomery, Alabama, gold. No, that's a little more. This looks a little bit more like somebody thought about it, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. It's much cleaner than.
I think
Yeah.
that the Vanderbilts just didn't have very good taste. Like, sure, just throw in everything. And then here it's like, like rein in the variety. I mean, the furniture is gorgeous. And a lot of like, like the mirror, like the framing on the mirrors and the window treatments is all just consistent with the 19th century. And here there are books in how to arrange curtains for windows. This is Biedermeier. So Biedermeier doesn't really fall into the into Victorian. It's it is happening at the same around the same time or a little bit before, but since Biedermeier has a relationship with Empire, it can look similar. I think there are some similar ideas going on. So if you really want to go nuts on your window treatments, there were ways to do this. So here, this is from 1864. So recommendations for proportions for window treatments with lambrequins and palmettes. And the lambrequin is a short piece of, lambrequin is kind of like a valance, short piece of decorative drapery hung over the top of a door or window, draped from a shelf or mantelpiece. Palmette is a narrow border of cloth or wood fitted to the top of a door or window to conceal the curtain fittings. And this is one of my favorites. You see there's a man right here who emerges from the clutter. I love this, vortex of Victorian. But you see the way the drapery, this this draped, they use these like the elaborate, really a window treatment on a doorway, going from room to room. That's more unified. So it could have, there were times when it was done better, or a little bit more, with restraint or with a plan. This is a Pompeian style. So J. Pierpont Morgan, again, a wealthy New Yorker. So here, this is a German dye stuff sample card. Chemistry, so chemical dyes, in the later part of the 19th century, you start to see the appearance of chemical dyes that allow for, some colors were just difficult to get, or I guess you could dye like the color mauve was very fashionable in the 19th century, especially in Paris, in women's fashion. Especially dresses dyed in mauve were very fashionable. But mauve, from an organic colorant, was very expensive to produce. So chemists got to work figuring out ways to create chemical substitutes to produce dyes, so that they can dye these colors, making them, accurate and durable, so they're light fast, meaning they won't fade. and to do this in larger and larger quantities. So this is an example of a sample card for like different colors that can be dyed. There's like different colors that can be produced with dyes. So chemistry. Here, this is one of my favorites from the 19th century. Tonnet, bent beechwood. Free of ornament, Tonnet furniture heralds the simplicity of 20th century furniture. This, we still use furniture like this today. People imitate Tonnet, this simplicity of this bent wood. And really, with Tonnet, the bent wood becomes the ornament. So there's no carving. It's just this, like what they would do is they would like cut strips of the wood and bend it. So if you steam it, if you get wood hot and wet, if you steam it, you can bend it. It'll eventually become soft enough that you can bend wood. And when it dries, the bend will dry in it. So there's a very ingenious way to produce this, more like an interesting design. And really, it's simple. And even though you have that the work of bending the wood, it makes it cheaper to produce if you're not gilding it, you're not carving it. All right, so here's an advertisement for a gas lamp. So the first electric light bulb was demonstrated in 1835. So this one is a patent for in 1874. So gas. So you have a little gas jet. You light it, turn on the gas jet, light it with a match, and you've got gasoline. Have any of you heard the term gaslighting?
Yes.
Do you know what gaslighting is?
Using natural gas to to light an interior or exterior even. It was used a lot on the like for street lights. I know to use it in residential interiors was quite expensive. Not to mention all the the gases that it would produce.
It's smelly.
Yeah. But it was pretty popular before the electric current was discovered.
It was. Well, and it was.
That and kerosene was also one of.
Yes.
Aside from fire.
Yes, gas.
Or like oils.
Yeah, oil lamps, oils, gas, gas and oil were used. But the term gas lighting is when you try to make someone think that they're crazy. And if someone's trying to gaslight you, they're trying to make you think something is true that isn't true. And there was a story.
Oh, gotcha.
There was a story written. There's a film made called Gaslight, and it is it's from I think it's from a short story, and it is a guy, this man who's trying to get rid of his wife, tries to make her think that she's crazy by manipulating the gas flow in their gas lights, and the lights would flicker while they're sitting. I think he would have somebody, some conspirator go down into the basement and mess around with the gas, the float of gas to the lights, and the lights would flicker in their living room, and she would say, "Huh, the lights are flickering," and he would say, "I didn't see anything." And eventually he convinces her that there's something wrong with her. which is terrible, isn't it? But the term gaslighting comes from, I've heard people use it more recently, like, people trying to make somebody believe something is true that is not true. Here, an adjustable electric light, 1910. This is looking a little bit like my grandmother's living room or dining room. Drawing room, this is in Maine, okay. Yeah, so more Herder. That's actually kind of cool with the wood. That has a unifying effect. Nice stairway, isn't it? All right. Well, that was cool. Wasn't that interesting?
Yes.
All right. So we will take a. I'm going to stop.